Championships, it's been on 2 occasions now at the Wonders that where the batting hasn't quite gone according to plan. Thursday night tonight. Just what do you put it down to? Is it conditions? Is it or is it just not executing what you're looking to go out there and do? Or good bowling from India?
I don't think it's one particular thing. I think yes, conditions have played a role, but in no way can we use that as an excuse, right? We still have to find a way. So if you go back to a couple of nights ago, you got to give credit to Indian bowlers. They bowled particularly well, and we didn't have any answers in terms of understanding our options on those conditions. And I guess pretty similar today. Our execution certainly wasn't there. I think the intent to score, and that's something that we often speak about, was certainly there. And something that we will have to reflect on is understanding our options on those conditions. And, you know, something that is always going to be judged is our execution. But it's certainly something that we have to take accountability for. We've gone through a period of time where batting has been pretty consistent. And now we find ourselves in a situation where we have to reflect and find some answers, and that's what we need to do.
Stu?
JP, you know, the batting, sort of the back bit of that Australia series here, the World Cup at the start, was all good. It flowed. The plans all looked like they were working. This is the third out of the last 4 ODIs, if you include the India game in Calcutta, the semi-final, where there's been just top order collapses. You know, when South Africa's good, they're very good, and when they're bad, they've been very bad. How do you explain the stark contrast between those two?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the thing about understanding your identity as a batting unit, you know, I think about us as a coaching staff coming in, what has it been, 8-9 months? And when you're trying to build a brand and a style of play, you're potentially going to have those contrasting experiences. And that's where the learning happens for me. So how do we find consistency? Is actually experiencing either or, and then part of the discussion and the preparation and understanding why things are happening, you find that consistency. And that's the journey for us. If we think, where do we go from here? You look at Champions Trophy, you look at 2027. Yes, it's a far way away, but understanding that brand is the important and the style of play. But now it's about identifying the how. So on certain conditions, how are we going to play? When it's good, we're really good, like you said. When the conditions are good, we can score 400. But how do we still find our way to a 280 on a tough wicket? And that's the journey for us.
Ken? Oh, no, you can go then, Zahir. Yeah.
Thanks, Lucy. How's it, JP? Just more of a bigger picture type question. What do you feel about ODI cricket being played on, you know, pitches that are quite sporty? And I guess especially an occasion like Pink Day.
Look, I think if we historically look at the bull ring, the conditions are pretty similar in that first 20 overs in the first innings on a day game. I think back to even just Australia, where we posted close to 300. There was a lot of balls that went past the bat in that first 10 overs, that power play. And we got through it. Unfortunately, today we just couldn't find our way through it. It is something that we know that we were going to come up against, and we didn't find the answers, unfortunately. Yes, in ODI cricket, you want wickets that is competition between good batting and bowling. In the first phase of this game, you know, you'd probably argue that it was probably a lot more than we expected, even though we had an expectation of something there. But with that being said, we still have to find a way. So there's certainly no excuses there. Yes, the occasion is big, but us as the Proteas, we have to find a way.
Yeah, but just you've faltered against basically 2 different Indian attacks. One in Calcutta, one here. But what makes them as good as they are to get you 70 for 7, or for that matter? And then secondly, also you've chosen to bat under difficult conditions on 2 occasions. Is that brave or is that foolish?
What do you think? Okay, so let's address today. You're making decisions based on the information you have. So historically, you'd think if you get through that new ball period, it's a good place to bat. You put up a good score. There's a tendency for it to take a little bit of turn, become a little bit slower, which means that it might become a little bit tougher to bat. Essentially, they ended up batting in the best part of the day, which is actually the back end of the first innings. I don't think we made the wrong call necessarily on the toss. That was just the information we had, and we made the decision. With regards to the previous game, again, information, right? So we're making decisions based on the information, the ground stats, what has it been like in previous games here. And when we're not executing, these questions are going to be asked. But for us, it's about understanding the intent, option, and execution was where do we reflect around that, and where can we be better? And that's essentially the questions we have to answer. Yeah. So the thing that stands out for me is consistency. So if you assess conditions and understand where the biggest threat is, right, you have to land the ball there consistently. And if you think of just today, that is what they did. Yes, I think of Arshdeep and his ability to swing the ball up front as well as nibble it. So he's asking those questions consistently. So you're always under pressure. And when you don't have those answers, today happens. So as a bowling unit, we can take a little bit out of that as well. How do we become a lot more consistent in asking those questions in whatever conditions they are? Assess it, understand where the threat is, and be consistent with it.
Yeah. JP, following on that, there was no Shami, Bumrah, Siraj, the guys who played in the World Cup, and yet India comes with a new, almost inexperienced pace attack, and they surprises the host team. Is that surprising for you, especially because over the years, Indian team has been known to produce great batsmen, even the fast bowlers coming, different kind of fast bowlers. How do you look at that, and especially the way Arshdeep has evolved in the last 2 years, specifically from T20 bowler to ODI bowler now?
No, I don't think it's surprising. I think we always knew that the skill set is there, not only from Arshdeep, but the rest of them as well. The question is always going to be, do we have the firepower to come up against that? And unfortunately today we didn't. Yes, you accept the fact that they probably had the best conditions, but again, find the answers, right? And I look at the resources that the Indian team have had over a period of time, understanding playing in the IPL, playing against some of the best players in the world, best batters in the world, and having an opportunity to improve their skill set against them. And that bodes well, obviously, when they come into the international scene, having played against many international cricketers and found some success. I mean, you just think about this tour that India has come to South Africa with. You have close to 45 players here currently. And that shows you the depth that India has, which has obviously worked in their favor.
JP, if I'm not mistaken, it should be South Africa's fourth or fifth consecutive ODI loss against India. I could be corrected. But do you feel that there's a growing mental block in terms of playing India, because the losses in particular have been rather wide if you look back from that India tour, the World Cup, and this particular game?
I mean, as a coach, I can't say that that's something that we consider. That's certainly not something that we've chatted about. For us, it's really about coming up against the conditions and the opposition and finding the right formula for us in terms of how we wanna play the game. So my initial answer will be no. I've got no doubt come Tuesday, that we'll be putting up a big performance. No matter what we have to do first, what are the conditions. There's some great lessons for us, particularly as a batting unit, and that's something we'll reflect on and then hopefully put in a bigger performance.
JP, just on a positive note, how pleased are you with a guy like Tony DeZorzi, just his third game? Obviously he had the shock of 2 wickets falling in the second over, but he kept being aggressive, and he kind of had shifted the momentum a little bit.
Yeah.
Just before he got out. And then also maybe just a word on Andile Petlekwa, another guy who's not certain of his place.
Sure.
But showed what he can do in the lower order there.
Yeah, when you think about Tony, he certainly has all the attributes to be consistent at this level. And what I really enjoyed, as you mentioned, is still finding a way of scoring above 100 strike rate under those difficult circumstances. And I think it was what I really enjoyed was the conviction in his movement, conviction in his options, his clarity of commitment to his shots. And that's on the back of really good grinding performances that he's put in the domestic scene, particularly in one-day cricket. He's aggressive in nature, in terms of how he wants to play the game. So it's exciting to see. I think there's some great prospects there when you think of the top of the order. From Mandile's perspective, obviously somebody that has been around for many years, sort of floated in and out of the national team, and it's great to see him under that bit of extreme pressure in a way, still finding a way to transfer pressure. For us, momentum is an important thing to reflect on. We're always trying to gain it or maintain it. And, the situation called for him to try and gain a little bit of momentum, and he found a way to do that with Nandre at the other side. So there's a positive there. And now it's about taking those opportunities and really making the most of it. If he could get to that 60, 70 run mark in some way, that gives us a chance today. So great starts. And now how do we kick on from there?